All right, it's time to call. On here. Hello. That's the main one. If you, I was looking at the location of where Byerly is, and I have a question. I don't know whether Jason can answer it. Is it? Are there wells that we're pumping more than normal in that area because we don't have access to the Indian Kern pipeline, Indian Kern Road pipeline? In other words, with that pipeline being down, there's at least one well that we had access to because of that pipeline, right? And so were we compensating with other pumping?
Yes.
Could it, is it,
Short answer is yes. So we pump far more from the southwest well field than we have in the past because the pipeline is down. We converted 17 and then running it in a way that it's not designed for
okay.
because that pipeline is down, and also we're running the plants far more than we normally have.
So my question was, could that be affecting the coning effect in the area where this Byerly well is? Is it just something came to mind? Do we have wells in there that maybe we're pumping differently or more, or that we don't normally pump that the Byerly well could be affected?
I haven't seen necessarily a major drop
Right.
in the pumping level.
Okay, of our wells.
Yeah.
And another well that's located very near there is David St. Armand's well is pretty near that area. And I think we decided, Stan and I talked, I think Peter Brown's well is in that area too. So those are two people that if Chuck wanted to do a little investigating before he goes to the next meeting and say, I'm talking with people in the area and their well isn't dropping. So it's just a thought.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, and that was my question is, first of all, does the water district have anything happening that may be affecting coning in the area? And the second one is to help verify what's happening in the area. Can we look at a couple other wells that, because I think Peter has that well, that system that you bought where you can watch the level all the time. He has one of those. And I don't think David St. Armando's, but those are right in the area. So it might be something that could help Chuck out to get ready for the next meeting.
Yeah, I was wondering, you attend the staff calls. Has there been any discussion about that Byerly well and having it come back for action as opposed to information?
Yeah, in the staff meeting, they said they had not fully done their research on that well. We did have some discussions. One of the things we discussed was public perception. Indian Valley's Water District personnel pay their bills. We are the largest funder of the Groundwater Authority. We turn approximately 50 customers' water service off by pursuant to public law every month. And yet those people's funds are being sent to us, which we send to the Groundwater Authority, which then uses that money to drill new wells for people whose wells have gone dry. And we understand their position on that, and they explained it very well, but I was a little concerned about the sort of the public perception of how that, how that money flows, and is it truly fair from a public perspective, and they seem to believe yes.
Of course, yeah.
So these were things I brought up. I thought they were legitimate comments. I think one of the wells that's gone dry was also appeared to have had something happen at the bottom 40 or 50 feet of the well, and it was 50 years old, and so I don't know. I don't understand their process. If you have a 50-year-old well, it's kind of like taking a battery back to the that's gone bad. I got a 7-year warranty, but the battery's 2 years old. I get some percentage of that back. If you have a 50-year-old well, I was kind of curious to see how the groundwater authority would come back and sort of prorate what the value is of that well having gone dry, whether they replace that well at the full value, replacement value, despite the fact of its age, or whether they factor in those things.
He brings up a good question, is if the Byerly well could have been deepened, wouldn't have been a lot, I believe they drilled, I thought they said they drilled another well. I'm pretty sure, or they're estimating a new well, 31,000, something like that? And because that's,
61.
it may be at 60, but it's being recommended by the driller. Well, what else is a driller gonna do? My question is and Chuck knows this, and that's how I wish he was here, but I think he knows this, and we need to talk to him more before next meeting, is that could that well have been deepened? Or was it in such bad mechanical condition, then it needed to be replaced? So my question is, how much should the GA pay?
Well,
Should they just pay?
Actually, I think it's simpler than that. What the staff report said is they actually lowered the pump
And they said it won't
8
last
feet,
long.
and it started pumping water.
Right.
So if it's pumping water, the well didn't go dry.
Good point, yeah.
You could drill a new well right next to it, and it's going to be looking at the same water that was in the original well.
Right.
So the pump, and Chuck made that comment out.
Yes.
The well didn't go dry.
Dry.
The well, I think he said it 3 times to make sure everybody heard it.
Right.
But it didn't go dry. And I guess my question would be, why would anybody who is in the Indian Wells Valley Water District want to spend $61,000 on a new well when they could hook up to the water district?
Right. And that needs to be the balance. Chuck needs to be asking those questions. I mean, would it be cheaper to have them tie into the water district, right?
Oh, right.
Or in the worst possible case is, we don't want to pay for a new well. What we want to do is say, assuming your well was in good shape and all you had to do is deepen it, would have been $25,000 or $15,000.
Well, or the other
Yeah,
alternative is to
right.
consolidate with their neighbor.
Consolidate with neighbors, other alternatives.
Because
Yeah.
what the state is pushing is fewer wells.
Yeah.
And so we need to look at that.
I just don't want to be, I agree, I just don't want us being on the hook. And by say us, because we're paying most of the bill for a new well.
Well, I think the application that they have to fill out,
Right.
assuming they're going to fill out an application, and they shouldn't even bring it back. In fact, they shouldn't have brought it to the agenda
Yeah.
to begin with.
I think they wanted to make a public statement about wells going dry.
It was, yes, a public relations stunt for sure. But I think the actual application will show, what the real story is, and then we can ask some pointed questions.
Yeah, I'm hoping to make a decision on that particular day. Chuck holds them off.
And I think there's another important thing to discuss when we're done with discussing wells, and that's sort of so they did approve the motion to ask Congress for approval to do this funding. Embedded within that analysis, they were sort of comparing costs between recycled water and the proposed pipeline projects. On further analysis, I think we believe that those are not, in general, apple-to-apple comparisons. So the comparison of what the dollar cost per acre foot for recycled water included the cost of the water, the supply of the water, transport fees, and a lot of things that were potentially operation and maintenance may have been included. But as we compared those numbers later, I think we've come to note that we believe that the the comparison was not technically accurate in the sense that particularly the pipeline project didn't have a good O&M estimate included within it. It may not have included all the cost of water. So it seems like, so we're actually, the district itself is undertaking some analysis of those numbers. I can't say positively that they didn't include everything, because there was this sort of vague $9 million O&M cost referenced in their staff report, and when we sort of questioned them about what that cost was, we didn't get a clear answer. And so we're trying to dig in and try to recreate that $9 million O&M. So that would be on top of.
On
So
top
there's a
of
lot
capital
on
expenses,
top of
yeah.
capital, and so,
Yeah.
so the questions that we are currently raising are, who pays that $9 million bill? Is it really a $9 million?
And I believe, I think Stan will probably agree, I think the 9 million is woefully low. I think it's more in the neighborhood of 11 to 15 million dollars a year for the water fixed costs, movement, the operations, the maintenance. I believe it'll be between 11 and 15 million, not 9 million.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
That's good. That'll be
So, and I
directly
think
absorbed by the users.
The focus, of course, from our perspective is, and we've had discussions with them where we've pointedly asked, we would like an estimate of what burden will fall upon the Indian Wells Valley Water District customers, so that we can at least give them a complete picture. There's all these, they seem to have a good plan for the O&M, or for the construction of the pipeline. They do not seem to have I've looked at some data that gives a pretty good accounting of electrical costs for the pipeline and sort of operation and maintenance, and that's about 1.9 million a year. I have not yet found any information in their reports that talk about what the cost of water is. Their comment is that will be paid by the fees, the pumping fees. And I don't see in there, but then when you sort of cross-reference that with some of their financial reports, I'm not sure if they're putting that much.
They just
in
don't
there.
know
Yeah,
at this point.
right. So we're really trying to hone in on the things that we care about, which is the cost to our customers and sort of the quality of water. And we're going to have a collaborative visit from Provost and Pritchard and Stetson next. Is it both coming next week, Jason?
As far as I know.
Yeah, so they'll both be coming, and they're gonna meet with our experts, and we're gonna sort of chat about different water quality concerns, where connections might happen, whether we need treatment on this end, and a lot of other things that could even add more cost.
I'd love to listen to that meeting. Maybe I'll come and sit in the back. Nothing to say, just to listen.
I guess one last comment I'd like to make on the funding. We got a letter from the GA responding to the questions that we asked them to give us some better idea of what the cost was. And I'm reading verbatim from the letter. It says, "We do not currently anticipate any loans, as all costs may be reimbursed by grant funding." And then it wasn't more than 2 weeks later, after we received this letter, that the GA voted for a 75% funding level.
All right.
And so it seems like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Well, and on top of that, you don't get grant funding for O&M costs. Those are recurring costs. You don't finance your phone bill either. I mean, those O&M costs are just recurring costs that have to be paid by somebody. So we're sort of attempting to get them to give us more information about what the costs will be, and we're trying to work collaboratively with them so that we have a better understanding, because the board ultimately will have to look and review at that stuff and really decide whether the amount of money it's going to cost our customers is justified.
And we have a number of things to do, not just that, but the quality of the water. Will it tie into our system? Or maybe we say we don't want to tie it into our system. You got to do something else with it. That still needs to be determined.
Yeah.
So when they're looking at this money of $200+ million, with 50 of it being handled locally and the rest of it being by grants, they don't have a good handle on that 50 million. And if I understood them correctly, before the grant can take place, they have to have something in place to match the 25%, whatever that. So they need to know what that 25% is very accurately.
Yes.
If they go out looking for 50 million and all of a sudden it blows to 75 million plus financing charges, that sort of throws the whole thing out the water. So I don't know how they're going to do that. It's almost like they're putting the cart before the horse, because in order, they could apply for it, but then if it's awarded, they gotta prove they've got the other 25%.
You know,
Yeah, and I think embedded within their recently released sort of analysis, that's the preliminary design review, I believe. I believe the number was closer to 170 million as opposed to 150. Is that right?
For what?
For the construction.
Oh, I can't, I was
So
in
like
my mind is
150
that,
was thrown around, but when you
Well,
start
there-
digging into the reports, those numbers are
you
already.
mean, no, it's in the 200 million.
Yeah, it was up to 220.
225 or something like that, yeah. And I want to say one last thing about wells. First of all, I think Chuck knows this, that anytime if a well truly goes dry because of the aquifer dropping, I don't think that the GA should be paying for anything more than the estimated cost to deepen it, regardless of because the first choice I would have is drill a new well. I'm gonna get a new well. My well's been there 50 years, 45 years, and it needs re-drilling because it's in poor shape. So I think Chuck knows this, that the most that they should ever be responsible for is saying, in your present well, regardless of its condition, what would the cost have been just to deepen it? I don't think the GA in any way should be paying for new wells, unless it's a brand new well that went dry, if it's, when it's 15 years old.
Yeah, I would defer to some of our operators, like Jason, if one of our wells went dry, do we typically drill a new well, or do sometimes we rehab the well just by putting in a new screen and back flushing, or do we deepen wells? What do we have any?
Yeah. Well, in this case, all they had to do is lower the pump. I mean, the well was already low enough.
Yeah.
Let's get Jason's answer here,
Well, we've never had a well go dry.
because we drill them pretty deep.
We're about 1,000 feet deep on most of our wells. But whenever we have a well issue, we definitely perform a series of analysis to find out what's going on inside the well before we just say, oh, it's time to drill a new well.
Okay.
Well 33 is a prime example of this. We put liners in, we put, a stinger on it. So there are things that we've done to try to lengthen the life of a well before we drill a new one.
Okay, and similar, if we get like reduced, I think we had a well, we had reduced flow, we pulled the well pump and found out that there were there's other reasons wells either slow down or stop producing.
But I can tell you this, if I'm a driller and I go to your house because you have a low well, the first thing I would say is, well, you only got about 8 more feet of water left. We better drill you a new well because it's going to go dry. That's what I'm going to say.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure my wife would tell you that you should always buy a new house.
That's right. Just my house is dirty.
If your house is dirty, you just go out and buy a new house.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to I think I asked about discuss feasible alternatives to the pipeline project. The reason I think this is on here is I keep hearing it, whether it be on the offside or at the meetings or whatever it is, that no one's brought any other feasible ideas forward, except for the pipeline's the only feasible idea. Nothing else should be looked at because none of them will work. I've not seen any real analysis except for the one given at the meeting that was at City Hall for the CEQA, that, we can't do it because they don't have the water and it's too expensive and they don't have a way to get off the. So what they told me was a lie about getting water from LADWP. But, and then of course there's talking about the wastewater. Now that's way too expensive. But how about other alternatives? There are lots of other alternatives, in my opinion, and they're saying no one's brought any of those forward. So my question was, can we create something because we keep saying there's alternatives. Can we put something that are alternatives that are worth exploring?
So I will comment that we have started that process internally,
Okay.
and we're working closely with our consultants. Jason did a really fantastic analysis. It's we'll call it mixed news.
Okay.
And I'm going to have Jason sort of brief this. So we were looking. One of the things I thought was that, well, what happens if these new water limits, the 42 gallons per person per day in 2035 and other things, significantly limit how much water we're allowed to take? What is the impact of that? And Jason's analysis actually came up with some actually really exciting and great news for our water district and for what we've done in the past. And I'm going to turn it over to Jason and let him sort of explain what he figured out.
So looking at the total water production and what was sold in the last 12 months and comparing that to the state's mandates at 2035 of 42 gallons per day per capita, and as well as the residential landscaped area, and adding those together and taking the census data about 2.57 people per household, and multiplying that by the number of connections that we have residential, we are about 1.2% over what we're allotted by the state
In 2035.
at the worst case scenario in 2035 currently.
So what a
And
fantastic story for the water
And that is
district.
before we even account for any sort of variances as far as swamp coolers and things like that.
So what a great story that the water district has done such a good job of conserving water. And we talk about this at all meetings, how we had this 2013 target, and now that we've had this increased population and we're below. And so really think it's a great story for us to tell that like the water district has been so far ahead of this. So like, this plays into conserving the aquifer. This plays into where we're gonna be in the future. This plays into the impact of these new regulations on us. And so what great kudos to the various boards that have been here and the people that have been here, that we're so far ahead of the game that we're in compliance with 2035 regulations today virtually.
And
That was amazing.
And that brings up a good point too, and I'll let you finish, Jason, I promise you look at the other thing, but on this particular point, so how much, if for some reason water's coming down that $2 million pipeline, how much of it does the water district truly need? It might not be very much. It'll be for someone else, so why should we have to pay for it? Anyway, I'll let you finish.
Now that basically sums it up. I mean, but to your point, when you look at the other things that are more locally attainable, including recycled water, I think it becomes a much more viable option to just stay within the valley and look at those things.
And that's why I would hope when you come out with some report for us, because I think we need to, we may even put alternatives on there that we can speak about that maybe haven't been fully explored, right? As far as I'm concerned. The one that hasn't been explored, for instance, and I don't know why people are afraid to talk about it, is, I've said it before, quite a few military bases in the desert, maybe 6 or 7, there was one that was in a paper, big time, are desalinating water. They're taking their brackish water, they're turning it into fresh water to supply the needs of the base. Why can't this base look at this? We've already proven the best quality and most brackish water is right below that base. So why in the world can't that be something that's a political issue? But if they were to go ahead and push forward with that, then that takes them off the aquifer as well, about another 2,000 acre feet. So those are the kind of little projects that could work, but how we make that happen, I don't know. But is that feasible? I don't know why not.
It doesn't really take them off the aquifer. I mean, brackish water is water, and so it really is gonna end up with how much recharge are we going to have?
But it doesn't make a difference.
and-
They're not, the base isn't responsible. They have no, let's just say that they're taking 2,000 acre feet right now. And they begin to take their water as a brackish water thing, okay? That's 2,000 acre feet that isn't coming out of our potable water. And what you're saying is are they still going to get charged as production from our aquifer for what they take out of the brackish water? Well, they're the military, they're the government. They don't even have to abide by the rules where the discharge from that, by state rules has to be down to a powder. I'm just saying, but I don't want to discuss the project. I'm just saying, is that a feasible project that the base could
I'm
do
not
that?
against the Navy using brackish water,
Right.
don't get me wrong, but that's the purpose of the adjudication.
Right.
The Navy has to be involved. I mean, what is it, DOJ
Yeah.
represents the Navy, and the question is, what I've been told is the Navy has to justify their use of the water just like everybody else in a comprehensive adjudication.
And another question.
Doesn't mean we can't use brackish water.
Right.
That's a separate issue.
But when you have the military base doing it for their own supply, it falls under all kinds of different rules, regulations, and everything else, even within our GA. And the other question would be, is Cerros Valley up to something we don't know about? They talked about brackish water recovery to supply their potable water needs over there. And that wouldn't even be coming out of our aquifer. So those are the type of things that as you further investigate, that as wild as they may be, they can go on a list of possibilities. Why doesn't the list of possibilities include trading water? We buy the water in the south somewhere, trade it over to LADWP, and then we bring it off up here. It's a short trade. It's just a trade of water. Now, granted, to get 5, we might have to buy them 10, and we'll get 5, whatever the deals may be. But that prevents a $200 million pipeline along with maintenance and everything else that goes with it.
No,
So why isn't that on the list?
Well, there's another thing that we're kind of looking at too, and we have this really dramatic summer to winter variation. So you sort of say like the basic amount of water that we really use that goes down the toilet is sort of represented by our winter water. And I'm getting this from our engineers. I'm not making this up on my own. I mean, so our engineers are like, so like that's sort of our floor. Now, that's important because it almost doubles in the summertime. And one of the things we're trying to figure out is like, okay, what constitutes all that extra water that gets used in the summertime, and are there opportunities? So this leads us to questions like things like what Chuck has talked about. Is it viable to have a program to replace swamp coolers and pay for it? And how much water can you save from that? And is it viable to look at other things? Like I don't know what the big hitters are. When I talked to our staff, they said, yeah, there's this huge variation, and we're pretty sure that the flow into the wastewater treatment plant doesn't change dramatically, which tells us that the water being used in the summer, if you just anecdotally, is probably stuff that's being used outside of the home, watering grass, swamp coolers, other things, and it represents a pretty significant savings. I think just looking at the graph and saying, sort of an area under the curve thing, you're talking about maybe a quarter to a third of our water usage, falls into that arena where it could be possible to reduce even further. And I think those are things that should be looked at as well.
What I want to make sure that happens is that the public knows there are other alternatives out there, regardless of how crazy they may seem. And, even bringing water from our wells up in Inyo. Is there a way to get them here? If it's a political battle, then maybe that needs to be fought. But all those things to be looked at, because what we're getting now is, no, you can't do it because we don't like it. No, you can't do it because we don't like it. Mm-hmm. And I think that we need to put in writings. I think it's because the GA for sure is telling the public there are no one's brought any alternative forward that is feasible. Right. That is even worth looking at, is how they say it. So I think we need something.
Right. Well, my understanding is that Inyo controls groundwater.
Right.
They don't control surface water.
Surface water, that's right.
So it's not out of reason to look into that as a potential.
Exactly. There's ways to do this, but no one wants to look at it because you have a bully up on the hill there that's saying, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. We're not going to let it happen. Well, maybe it's time that more work is done. But I still think everything revolves around the adjudication. Until the adjudication is done, all we can really do is put out ideas out there at this time. But I think there are ideas. So as long as you guys are working, I appreciate it. But think outside the box. Think of everything possible that is an alternative to that darn pipeline. Because I think what they're expecting is someone's going to come up with an alternative that's going to produce 5,000 acre feet, one alternative. My opinion is it might be 5 or 6 little things that produce it.
Especially if you only need one.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and conservation is another piece of that. Like you don't actually have to keep producing more water. We've proved that we can reduce water use, and there are certainly big targets out there for the future.
Yep.
Seals Valid Minerals is one. Swamp coolers are another. Those things all add up as well.
Has Kern County approved using gray water systems at home? I know when I built my house, I wanted to put a gray water system in to take, so I could use it for irrigation. And my plumber says, no, Kern County will not approve it. I made a mistake. I should have had laid both the black pipe and the gray pipe underneath the slab, have everything there ready to go. I had heard they approved it. Did they, Jason? Do you know?
I believe there are things that you have to abide by, but I do believe they permit them.
They permit gray water systems for irrigation.
There are obviously some sort of regulations that go along with it.
Yeah, because they don't want you washing grease in your garage down the drain. It goes out there.
Yeah, it has to be directly piped from
laundries and showers and
I don't know if
sinks.
you can come out of the shower, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it depends on what you like when you shower.
I think Ridgecrest looked into that about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I believe the outcome was that even though they hadn't yet declared it legal or illegal, there had been a problem earlier in Inyo Kern where people were using gray water and there wasn't enough water in their sewer system to actually plug all the waste down to
that
the
would have to be taken
wastewater
into
treatment
account.
plant. So there was a little concern on the part of the city that if too many people started using gray water on plants, then they'd have sewer
Isn't
problems.
that funny? But I mean, it is an answer
Well,
that could be
but-
worked out.
But on the other hand, right now, we've got, I believe, around 2,600 acre feet of wastewater.
I know.
And even, I mean, and obviously you aren't gonna come up with 2,600 acre feet of injectable water.
Right.
But even if you could come up with 90%, they say 80 or 90% of it being useful, 2,100 acre feet, that, when you start looking at our reduced water usage, that puts us out into the, 50, 60, 70 year frame.
Yep. And that's what I'm talking about on alternatives.
We can
Yeah.
figure out how to inject it at a reasonable cost.
There's still work to be done. I just have a feeling that when it comes to the pipeline, they even if they got, I don't know that they can sell, because I don't think it's just a Prop 218 with, if they go to sell this other money, this other 50 million they need, and want to do as a property tax, I believe that has to go as a proposition vote. I think it would be. I'm not sure. What? No. I mean, they have a choice. So you're telling me they could just mail out something, just like they did with the trash, right? And just do it with a protest vote, as opposed to a vote, because don't forget, they're gonna be bonding this. This is a bond. And most bonds go out for a public vote. Every school bond does. Yeah. So it's just a question, I mean,
But just our bonds I don't think it would apply to them either.
yeah.
I believe it's just.
I'm just saying that I don't think it's a slam dunk to come up with the money they're gonna come up with. And they may get a lot of
Well,
pushback.
there hasn't been a lot of discussion about the legalities of what they're proposing
Right.
in terms of raising that money.
Okay.
But I'm sure it'll come up eventually.
So we'll go ahead and move on. We're going to have a chance. We're going to have our board meeting before the next GA meeting, so hopefully they'll have their agenda out, and Chuck might have something he wants to discuss. If nothing else, then we'll move on to number 4, change the meeting times. This was suggested by Chuck. I don't have a problem, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I think it's more up to the staff, what works for you guys.
Jason was recommending 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
So we could do 6 o'clock at my house.
So, I think the answer to that is the district is considering a 4:10, and if we work 4:10s, the staff will be here a little later. And I think 3 o'clock would work under a 4:10 scenario for you, Jason, or would it? Because normally you'd be off at 3:30, is that correct?
That is correct, and if we go to a 4:10, this would be smack dab towards the middle half of the end of the day, so it would be fine.
So there's a plug for board approval of our future proposal to move the staff to a 4:10.
Right now, you're working
980.
yeah, you're working the, what's it called,
980.
980, yeah. And you're proposing a 410, is that what you're doing? And which with Friday will always be an off day
Yes.
rather than alternate?
Yeah.
Okay. And if that happens, then this works.
Yeah.
So do we want to make a decision here, or do we want to wait? What do you recommend, Jason?
I'm fine with it. No matter what, it's fine to have it at 3 o'clock. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys pay me to be here, so that's fine. Whatever works for the committee members.
And I maybe I won't be on the committee next year, so we won't drag it out so long. It'll go quicker. I don't have a problem with it. I guess we can do we need to bring the recommendation back to the whole board? Or I think as a committee, we can make that decision, can't we?
It's your meeting. I think you can do what you want with it.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with 3. In fact, I think it works a little bit better for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously Chuck is supposed to be working a day job, so
Right.
it really does help him
Yeah.
if he can do it at 3, get off work early rather than getting off extra early and then come here.
It's okay for me. Sharon said it's fine because I can pick up dinner on the way home. So is it okay with you being the representative, Chuck? Is 3 o'clock okay?
Oh, I think that's
Then
excellent.
then let's do it. Okay. 3 o'clock it is. All right. Number 5, future LADWP aqueduct releases. Have we made any progress on working with them on what they want to do in the future? Have we talked to them at all?
I have not, and it is on my schedule of things, of the dozens of people and entities I need to meet with and
Right.
sort of have discussions with, so it is not currently on my calendar, but in the course of business, I wanted to talk to people up in Inyo County and sort of understand their position and then approach LA to DWP with sort of like this, what is
I-
really preventing us from utilizing water from your aqueduct?
Let-
Is the role of Inyo County. So I wanted to talk to Inyo County before I talked to LADWP about different.
I'd get recommendation from, in closed session along with legal on that particular one. I think we know the stance of Inyo County, and whether you think you can make headway is one thing. But my particular point is that we strike while the iron is hot, that LADWP wants to do something. They anticipate this happening again. They're ready to move. I would rather have something that's in place, because don't forget, the only reason LAWP will hold anything up is that if they think Inyo won't be happy, but they're gonna be right in the middle of it as well. I think, to me, it's a deal between us and LADWP, and if we can come to an agreement that, hey, we're gonna put in, some kind of water storage or injection wells or whatever, and we're gonna bring it all in this way, I'd rather be at that particular point, and then, but I think it's a closed session issue along with legal, what they think is the best route, because I think you're just gonna find as we go on that Inyo County is dead set against us.
Okay,
no matter what we
so
do.
I will take that as direction to move forward with talking to LADWP.
I would try to find a contact, whether you need to give Don a call, or I think maybe Tim Parker might be involved, and also Krieger and Stewart, and say, where are we with this, and how do we progress with this? Because now's the time to do it, because if we have another storm or potential winter coming up, we have an issue.
Yeah. Have we started looking at what the cost of a simple injection well? Well, I'm not talking about one that you pump the water down under force. I'm talking about maybe a gravity-fed injection well.
Things Chuck were talking about, punch a few holes in the ground just to.
Well, you gotta go
Yeah.
through, the first clay layer.
Right.
And I guess my feeling is that the rules and regulations, as long as you don't get all the way down to the aquifer, are gonna be simpler, and it's gonna be a lot cheaper to have that kind of a pseudo injection well than a
But we're in a
real injection
position,
well.
we're in a position with the LADWP pay for
So
it.
I am gonna look to my staff, who seems to have answers to all these types of questions. They've thought about it for years. So, Jason, you have any thoughts? I know you talked about one well where we could potentially inject. What sort of thoughts have you guys?
We talked about using well 36. Was drilled as a production well for a farm back in the day.
No, that's the one where the water flows so much underneath the casings hitting the side of the well that Chuck told us about?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know, when you're talking about something like that, it may be something that we look at sort of a basin area, and then you have multiple holes
Yeah.
that it can feed down into, because I don't know if one well would be sufficient to allow the water to get down into the aquifer like we need it to do.
The options are this, in my opinion. If I was LADWP, if I could convince everybody to put in a water storage area, basically a deal that I'm going to store water here, that way they get something from it. If it's just a case of dumping the water here and it has to be, and it's all going to come here, then they don't get anything out of it. So you be careful how you approach that. Because, if it's a water banking issue, they've already said they'll pay the 55, 60 million to put the whole injection system in and everything. But however, for every, 10 acre feet they put in, we get 1, they get 9 or something like that. I mean, it depends on the contract. But on the other hand, if it's just to relieve them during these conditions only, it may be something where they might pay for it. I don't know until you start talking to them. But they need to do something, because I know they don't like spreading that water out up above, because it can cause a lot of damage. And if they could just offload it in one place, man, that'd be big for them. And I don't know that, again, this is something we deal with them directly on. So I don't know who to talk to. I don't know who Don was talking to, but I know they actually approached him at one point.
I'd be interested in getting some pricing or cost
Yeah.
information on, what's the minimum well cost? Not a true injection well, but something that goes down through the first clay layer, because I think that's what Chuck's been talking about
Yeah.
now for over a year.
Yeah.
And you can't count on that via aqueduct releasing water every year.
That's right.
But even if it's only every 5 or 10 years, it's a shame to let it go to waste. And if we can do something at a reasonable cost, why not?
I think it's going to be at the, not the whim, I should say, but at the it's whatever LADWP thinks is best for them. That's what it's gonna be.
Oh.
And what we put it as, hey, we'll take all the water and, as much as you wanna put here. But then you need to maybe come up with a way to make sure, because they can't just release every bit of water through that one, what was the main one they were releasing on? Fremont, yeah.
Fremont?
I don't think they can release everything there. Did they finally quit releasing?
I haven't seen it lately, but
Not yet? They're still, oh, you don't know?
it was about 3 weeks ago that I drove by and there was water going through, but I haven't been out there lately.
Wow.
What's the sort of estimated quantities at this point?
When they stopped releasing it last time, it was over 10,000 acre feet
10,000
for
acre
the
feet.
summer.
Yeah.
Amber says it's still going on.
It's still going on?
Yeah,
So we could be approaching 11, 12,000 acre feet for this whole thing.
yeah, which is,
A lot of water.
that's essentially 2 years of what the GA says we need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's just going down. That's
Again, on these particular things, I think this is something you should maybe get for a discussion in closed session a little bit. Let's just see how we want to proceed with this, because it's just the political players involved. And I mean by political, I mean the GA, I mean, I don't know where all this will land. We need to talk about it and see where we need to head with it. But I agree with Stan. Is there a way we could get a cost? I'm not sure what kind of well Chuck was talking about. Can we do a quick estimate or something, what something like that would
Put
cost?
them together.
Yeah, just to get an idea in our head of
Yeah.
what it would cost. Not a full injection well at 1,000 feet, just get it below the surface.
Yeah. If the first clay layer is only, is at 100 feet, there's only, all you gotta do is go to 110.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
And then let gravity force it down rather than putting pressure on it to force it down.
All right. Anything else on LADWP? Hearing nothing, we'll go to potential impact of recycled water. I don't know that there's a lot to report here unless you have something, George, on the recycled water that we talked about. Have you spoken with the city? Have you done anything on it?
I've approached, I talked to Ron.
Okay.
I didn't get anywhere with that. That just sort of,
Yeah.
no response. I will make the following comment about recycled water though. I like the idea of, let's say we went through some adjudication process and we got some amount of water. And then, let's say we got 3,000 or 4,000 acre feet as our allocation. And then we paid for some sort of recycled water project and Searles Valley Minerals stopped pumping and we brought that 2,000 acre feet into the district. And then we decided it, and we sort of crafted some great regulation that said, as we absorb these smaller wells, and I've talked to Jason about this, so each get like, say, two acre feet a piece as sort of this de minimis allocation. So we sort of spread our thing and maybe we absorb another 50 or 100 wells at some point, and we say, well, that's 100 wells could be 200 acre feet more. And over time, what you could do is you could say, well, look at that. We have enough water rights that we don't need, we don't need a pipeline. We don't need any other water. We can leave that problem to other people. It's another way to sort of look at this problem from a conceptual standpoint as we move forward. Certainly that would relieve us of the problem of paying these high replenishment fees. And
Right.
we could let other, so there's, when I look at recycled water, I always want to look at how can we utilize different things that we can do and maybe investments that we can make that benefit us in the long run. And I think investments that give us a larger allocation of water are things we should always keep in mind.
Did we ask Renee or our engineering department or Chuck Krieger, what are the legal requirements for wastewater treatment plants in California now? I thought, again, no one's got me that answer. What legally, what can they do with their wastewater from it? What has to be done? Because I thought there were some new legal requirements in the last year. Do we have any handle on that yet? Or how can we find out?
We can find out, but it depends on what you want to do with it.
That's what I meant. But I thought the state had come out and said, you can no longer just take your wastewater and spread it on the ground.
Right.
I thought they said you need to do something with it.
You do have to do something. That's why the city.
What is that something is what I'm wondering, because I think that the city is going to have to do something with it besides just spread it on alfalfa.
It depends
There's
on.
not enough alfalfa. I mean, that was an agreement they
Yeah.
came to years and years
What do you
ago.
do now?
Just to placate.
They're just spreading it now, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but if they want to build a new wastewater treatment plant, my feeling is the EPA
Okay.
And.
Lahontan too's in there,
And
yeah.
Lahontan's gonna require them to put all of that water to beneficial use.
That's, I think maybe that's what law says, that's go to beneficial use.
And that's separate and distinct from what quality of water we need
Right.
to inject it into the ground. But it's pretty severe, and I think they actually went through on that one, is it Army Corps of Engineer?
Yeah.
Study and looked at very thoroughly all of the various issues associated with preparation of the water to inject it. And it's not easy.
No, I mean, we went through that with Chuck and what has to happen with the water before you can inject it and where you can inject it, and you have to have a monitoring well in between. There's a lot to be done with that, and that was our high cost. But I think you hit, I think you hit, dead hit on what I maybe be looking for. It has to be put to beneficial use. I don't know if beneficial use is defined by the state. What does that mean? But where I'm going here is I think the city is gonna be forced to do something with it.
Yes,
I don't
well, I
think they
agree.
could just take the idea that, okay, the GA doesn't want it, and they're not gonna do anything with it, we're just gonna dump it on the ground. So that's why I'm surprised Ron didn't even wanna talk with you based on what the GA said. I'm not surprised, because I would've said, Ron, did you hear what the GA said? That they don't mind us moving ahead with the water district dealing with the wastewater, which means working with you guys. So,
Well, you know, they of course said they want to sell it to the GA, but the GA can't use it. I mean, GA is not a water user. They somehow have to get it to an end user, and that would be us or Cerros Valley.
And I do not want them sitting there saying, I got a gold mine here, I'm gonna sell it, because in fact, if they have to get rid of it in beneficial use, then maybe they might have to pay somebody to do a beneficial use with it. You see, there's a whole issue going on there, but I don't wanna drop the whole idea. You said it could be about, even after the needs on the base, their chewy chub and whatever else they're doing, we're still looking at about 2,000, possible 2,000 acre feet, no matter how you cut it, you know?
Well, on the other hand, you know, if we could use all of it,
Yeah,
you know, it seems to me that it would behoove us to try to get all of it, but in the meantime, what we need to do is open the door to the city, making them at least start discussions with us on how we work together to put it to beneficial use. I mean,
do you think the GA needs to direct them to do that? Because obviously, you got a cold shoulder, right?
I just didn't get a very positive response.
Okay.
yeah, well, and of course, that's back in 2020, when we originally offered to work with them, we got, I would say, something less than a very positive result. But then we just sort of let it lie,
Right.
and we didn't push it. And I think what we need to do is get the public aware, make the public aware of what the issues are, and based upon what our demands are and what's available locally, do we want to spend ultimately $300 million on a pipeline, or do we want to spend 80 or 90 million dollars on a wastewater treatment plant that will take us up through 2080, 2090?
Why don't we do this? What if we were to take and talk to a city council member who would like to work with the water district and get them to ask that question? Basically, ask during one of their discussions on the GA is, hey, I see the GA has closed the idea on treating wastewater from our plant. So as a city, what are we going to do with that wastewater? Just flat out ask them. We might be able. You know people. I know people. I'll ask. Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. I think it needs to be asked in public. What are you going to do with the wastewater for the treatment plant? Because the GA says, well, it's too expensive. So we're not dealing with it anymore. That might move them off center.
And just not deal with it.
I know.
I mean,
But it needs to be asked.
Can't
Yeah.
just ignore it. It's a reality.
I think either myself or you or somebody who knows city.
Well, I've got a couple other ideas I'd share with you later.
Yeah, okay, but we need to get them off center on that. Okay, are we gonna go anywhere with it? I don't know, but I think it's worth a try, because that's part of the puzzle. 2,000 acre feet there, man, that'd be great. Brackish water study, I don't know if any movement on that. Has that been-
I'd like to just note that I got a very comprehensive briefing from the contractor that has been working this brackish water study. Went through the model, looked at where brackish water was. Of course, it's all under Navy property. I believe what I heard was that contract or that grant that's funding that is soon to end. It's going to expire fairly soon, and lacking some coordination with the Navy. There wasn't a lot of really good options. They explored several different options of where they could try to draw brackish water. They drilled one well. I think they were hoping for a relatively low salinity level. They got a relatively high salinity level, and it didn't look promising. So we really, like, the only way to sort of move in that direction is to sort of work with the Navy. So I do have a meeting scheduled with Mr. Kersey, I believe, from the Navy. I want to talk to him about that. I mean, one of the things that I think is, so I'm trying to learn, I think my general understanding of not only do you have water underground, you have flow underground. You have these underground rivers, and the water flows from the mountains. It then flows sort of across the valley and then flows under the Navy base, and then from the Navy base, I don't know where it flows to. But, Fly, okay, so there's this flow. One argument you might make to the Navy is that, like, if we keep drawing all the water from this upstream level and it's flowing under there, it's eventually gonna, if you're worried about subsidence, if water keeps getting drawn from this upside of where the water flows to under the Navy, you could still have lowering of the water tables under the Navy base.
I'm a bit confused on this, George. I'm not a geologist, but I don't know that we're creating any more brackish water. The brackish water is there. I don't know how much more brackish water is coming into our valley. You might be talking about potable
Talking
water.
about fresh water, like
Okay.
flowing down. So
Yeah,
fresh water's flowing down. Is there a hydraulic link between the brackish water and the fresh water?
There always is.
There always
Yeah,
is,
and
right? So,
geologists can tell you there's some kind.
So
yeah.
what you see is, like, if let's say the best water is sort of on this side of the Navy base, and we keep lowering those water tables, that water flow that is heading from essentially, I guess,
The Sierras.
from the Sierras across under the Navy base, if you make this depression before it gets to the Navy base, eventually that flow is going to reverse and water's going to start flowing back this way from the Navy base, and that's going to lower water tables.
The argument
right
is
there.
that as you take
So if
more
you take-
potable water out, the brackish water
If-
could fill in.
What you say is, why don't you go put some wells down there on the downstream side and pull water out of there, so we're not pulling so much from the upstream side.
The evapotranspiration on the playa does eliminate some amount of that water. Now, how much they're still arguing about,
Yeah.
but it isn't just building up underneath there.
I think Tim can answer a lot of his
Yeah,
questions about
Tim
that.
would be the person to.
And also, I
Yeah,
got
so we're gonna talk about that.
very complex. It's a very, very, very complex aquifer we have with the
Yeah.
clays and but when it comes to the brackish water, the base didn't want them to take it because they're afraid about subsidence. But however, what you're seeing is they're coming to the end result of the first study.
Okay.
They can do, the next part of the study would be to create a pilot plant. And if they create a pilot plant to handle the brackish water that is currently available to them without going under the base, it's higher in mineral content than what's under the base. So they may not prove the entire system. So they're going to be making a decision soon if they want to request money to do a test plant based on the brackish water that's available, knowing that may not be the final water they use, that if they use any other brackish water, it may be better. And that's under the plant. So, but why wouldn't under the base, I should say, why wouldn't the base let them at least draw water for a pilot plant, knowing that this might prove something the base can use? You know what I'm saying? So maybe a decision would be, hey, if they're going to get money and they're going to do a pilot plant, let them tap into because they're not going to be using a lot of it, not enough to cause any subsidence, I would think. I'm not a geologist, but if the base could agree to that and we could prove the system, then we could say, we're proving a system now that could be beneficial to you because you got all the water right there. So again, that's one of those things that are on the list of possible possible solutions to stuff. So I don't think they're ending. I think they want to consider doing continue to study with actually a test plant of some kind. And, but with brackish water, they know has higher mineral content than what the good stuff is, which is the deepest stuff. Yeah. So hopefully they don't drop it entirely, because I still think that's a program that could be sold to the military, or at least even given to them if they want to do it, the technology, because it takes them off of our aquifer for potable water. Excuse me. Oh, you have any meetings scheduled? More? There's gonna be more. I think it's just wrapping up, so you probably hear more about it, George. Probably when it's wrapped up and what's the next step. And I think Anthony Brown's handling it, isn't he? He's the chief. Is it Anthony Brown that handles the brackish, or is it Wade? It's Wade. Yeah, and there one's engineer for Mojave and one is for Middlebrook, I thought. Yeah, talk to one of them and they'll move ahead. Heck, I haven't talked to him for so long. I can give him a call. I'll let you handle it though. All right. Alternate water sources. Oh, this is Chuck's always had this on here. What was that all about? I sort of forget. Is that drilling wells up in the El Paso area? I don't know. To me, that's just something that again falls into the line of Tim Parker and the staff over here. Is it something worth looking at? Because his argument is that I call it an elevated, it's part of our aquifer, but it's up here in the air. It's a little elevated aquifer. And that when in very wet seasons, a lot of it spills into Fremont Valley, where if we could capture that would do a lot for us, because it doesn't come in it tends to spill that way. Yeah, and not towards us. Some of it seeps through. So I don't know a lot about it. I'm not sure if it's a choice of spending $3 or $4 or $5 million over here to develop a well with a pipeline, maybe more than that. Yeah.
All right.
As opposed to other ideas.
Well, I thought Tim was talking to some people about getting funding for some test wells.
It might have been. Yeah, I'm not sure.
George, have you heard anything about?
Yeah, so on page 2, so it looks like there's an 8A, it says
Oh, yeah.
exploration of subbasins within the valley.
That's it, that's
I think
it.
that's what he was talking about.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want
And
to. I don't want to
thought
speculate.
We had already commissioned Tim to go. Tim has a bunch of contacts in
Yeah.
EWR,
Yeah.
and I thought they were looking for money for doing that already.
To get a better feel for that sub basin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But right now, all that water, it is getting a lot of water.
Yeah,
It's just
if
spilling
you-
over
if you
to
look at-
Fremont Valley.
If you look at the annual report, the
Yeah.
GA's annual report, the water in that area is going up. The water level is going up. So, if nothing else, that would certainly be an area that we could use to distribute our pumping, as opposed to, pump all in one area. We've been trying over the last 20 years to pump, to diversify the areas that we do our major pumping. And in this, of course, is 5 or 6 miles south, maybe 7. I don't.
It could be, yeah.
So if there is water down there, that would be a good place to pump that would not interfere with other private wells.
And maybe we get some of our money back from the GA, because they like to see the wells spread out more. So maybe we could request that they pay for it.
Yeah, well, you're assuming the GA is going to be around.
Yeah, that's right.
In that time, and
All right.
I'm,
So that's one of those two that I we'll just leave on here and we'll just move ahead with that. I think I'd like to know more what went on with Tim on that one. And I don't know if it's,
till we get feedback from Tim,
Yeah.
I don't know what.
I don't think you guys, is the staff heard anything from Tim about the sub basin over there? Heard anything? You haven't either, George? Nothing from Tim? All right.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I remember when this meeting would, remember back before the GA, remember how long this meeting used to take? 15 minutes, maybe. And so I apologize for the hour, guys, but I always enjoy visiting with the staff. Stan, do you have anything else you want to cover?
In terms of on the future agenda
Yeah.
items, are we there yet?
Yeah.
I was told at the one of the other committees that I was on that this committee was going to be responsible for vetting the water shortage contingency plan. And I don't know if this committee was told that they were going to be responsible for vetting
No,
it or
who-
not, but
Jason,
some committee
think he's got an
needs
answer.
to vet it
That's an
before it
answer,
comes
but I-
before the entire board.
yeah,
I know that Jim sent out I think the final draft, so I believe it's ready to go to the board in December.
okay.
Yeah, it was November, now we've pushed it to December, but there's still a 45-day period between the time that we send out a notice of some, we have to send out a notice with the final report 45 days before we actually,
I don't remember. At the last
Yeah,
board meeting,
I
last
would-
board meeting, we approved that, didn't we?
I think we defer, that was in Renee's court, is that correct? Yeah, so I think I would just suggest, let's defer until we have Renee, because I know she had sent some emails, and I cannot recall exactly what they said. I think she had some answers, and I can't speak for her at this point.
I know the board gave approval to move ahead with scheduling the public hearing.
yes. but-
Yeah, and
But
getting everything out in
nobody
time.
has seen the draft report yet.
Yeah,
That's a little bit of an issue.
right.
And so anyway, so if this is the group to vet it, then at your next meeting
Yeah.
with Chuck at
Yeah.
3:00,
Yeah,
you should.
Well, heck, that's end of
have
October.
reviewed
that's
and
end of
to make a
October. Yeah.
recommendation to the board.
Yeah, because I think it's November meeting is the public hearing, if I'm not mistaken.
No, December. It was,
It's-
it
oh, it's
was
December,
November,
okay.
now it got pushed to December because we forgot about the 45-day.
Okay, before you send it to this committee for perusal, make sure all the i's are dotted, and the t's are crossed, and there's no misspellings, and the page numbering's good. All that important stuff. All right, okay. Well, that's good. That's news. I guess we'll find out soon, because we'll have a board meeting coming up soon, in a couple of weeks. All right, anything else?
No, sir.
All right with that. Anything, George?
Oh, there's 2 people online.
Oh, look at that.
Should we make an exception to the agenda and give them an opportunity to comment if they want? Or do my only
No,
comment?
I mean, is anybody calling in? There's no calls.
Okay, so,
Okay.
I just want to say thanks again.
All right.
The staff here is unbelievably knowledgeable, unbelievably talented.
Which one did you talk? I'm just kidding.
I'm talking across the board. Just so happy to be here. This is turning out to be sort of a dream job for me. It's got a lot of challenges, which makes it fun, and working with great people is awesome.
And I agree with you. One thing I've always agreed about this water district, it's these guys out here to make it all happen, every one of them. And that's why I think we have a good district and the people in the community respect it. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 3:02 and a half.